Hey there, welcome. It is good to have you with me tonight. For those of you who watch this on the replay, please remember to like it, leave a comment, share it with a friend, and subscribe to my channel. It helps my channel a little bit, and I appreciate that. I really like teaching this topic. We always have a smaller group attend when I'm doing this topic, and that really helps to delineate things for me. Everybody wants to know how to read eyes. I really dislike that term. They want to know how to do an iris analysis, and they tend to not understand how many hours of study it takes, not just in iridology, but in anatomy and physiology and in nutrition and in herbology, or whatever modalities you want to put with that, how many hours it takes to be able to do a really solid iris analysis. So when people show up to this topic, I know that they really want to learn iridology. They're not just interested in it sort of as a party level thing, it's sort of a party game. They're interested in understanding how to learn iridology at a clinical level. So congratulations for being with me tonight. I'm going to invite you to please play with me in the chat box. I'm going to turn those comments on so that you can leave comments there as we're going. And I'm going to make this interactive. I'm going to be asking you things as well. And we are going to have some fun together. Does that sound okay? If that sounds good, give me a thumbs up or an oh yeah, or let me know in the chat box that that sounds good if we make this interactive. And again, congratulations for being here. As far as we go with this topic, I want to give you a bit of background as to where I came from on this. I've been studying iridology since 1979. So I've been at this for a few years. You go ahead and do the math. That's getting to be higher math, and I don't want to count that high. When I first started, I believed everything I was told. I studied Jensenian iridology, and it was fun, and it was fascinating, and it was interesting, and it was new. At least it was new to me. But as it turned out, after about 10 years of practicing it, it wasn't working. It was not doing what I'd been told it would do. It wasn't working the way I was told it would work. I was taught I could diagnose with it. Well, we all know you don't do that, right? And we know that now, you don't do that. And I was getting really frustrated just because it wasn't doing what I wanted it to. It wasn't behaving the way I was taught it would. And that was so frustrating. And I was about ready to just throw in the towel and walk away from that and just stick with herbs and nutrition. And, I would figure out my clients' needs some other way. I was going to walk away from this. And right about then is when there are no coincidences in life, right? My paths crossed with somebody who lives 8 hours north of where I live. I was up there teaching at a conference. And so was this fellow. And he introduced the idea of constitutional iridology. And then I come back into my office and I discovered there's an article on my desk about constitutional iridology, and everything just started lining up for me to learn constitutional iridology. And that is how I started. We are going to answer the top 5 questions that you need to have answers to before you start studying iridology. So we're going to hop into that in just a moment here. I am one of 10 level 3 certified iridology instructors in the world, certified by the International Iridology Practitioners Association. I was one of the first 3, and they give us new badges every couple of years, and they've just started doing that in 2022. So I've been a certified instructor with them for a lot longer than that. I've been an iridologist for a lot longer than that, but we just have the badges since 2022. I've studied under 8 different teachers, 3 different styles, and over the years with the herbology and nutrition training I have as well to be affiliated with these professional organizations, I've also created and taught many different courses in nutrition, herbology, iridology, biokinesiology, allergy testing, allergy reversing, color therapy. I was a certified prenatal educator for a few years, and I've written books that go with those, and they're all out of print except for the one that goes with my iridology course, and that is available currently only to my iridology students. Just throwing in a little heads up that the next course, Dynamic Iridology, will be starting on November 28th. I'll give you more information at the end of our time together today, but I really want to be moving in the direction of what we want to do with answering the 5 questions. So if you are a health professional, that means you've got, in my mind, that means you've got a college level anatomy and physiology course under your belt. And you want to learn iridology, then this is really for you. If you don't have the A&P, reach out to me. I will connect you with the course that I send all of my prospective students to, because it's a self-paced course. So if you're really focused and if you're a good self-starter, you can buckle down and get it done in about 6 to 8 weeks and then be ready to come into iridology with me. If you don't have that A&P, and it has to be college level, you have to be able to get proof of the course that it was at least 60 instructional hours and that you have at least an 80% or a B in that course. That's required, not by me, well, kind of by me, but mostly by the International Iridology Practitioners Association. Should you decide you want to certify in iridology, you've got to have proof of that. And I will only take students who've got that training, right? Because without it, we can't go very deep. I can teach you markings, but I can't teach you how the markings work together. And I can't begin to teach you how to think through an iris analysis and how to think through a protocol creation. So this is what one of my students said when she graduated. She's a certified esthetician, a clinical aromatherapist, a chartered herbalist, and a nutritional consultant. Lots of credentials. I took an iridology course from another school a few years ago. I'm just going to open my squeaky bottle here. There we go. Sorry about that. When the throat is getting dry, you just got to pour some water on it, right? I took an iridology course from another school a few years ago, but I was left feeling inadequately trained and with no confidence in the material or my abilities to perform accurate assessments. Upon completion of Judith's course, I feel very confident in my abilities and excited to offer iridology services to my clients. This course is an incredible value, highly recommended. All right, so let's dive into what those 5 questions are. And I would love it if you have other general questions about iridology, pop them into the chat box, because if you've got questions that I don't have on the screen, and if I can possibly work them into our time together today, I will. First off, we need to know what iridology is. So what is iridology? Why does it work? That's a question you'll get asked a lot. Why does it work? How do we know? What can it teach us? Why should health professionals use constitutional iridology? And how should it be used in a clinical practice? Okay, so those are the 5 questions that we want to answer today. If you've got any more questions, please drop them in the chat box, because I want to make sure that we make this time together what you need it to be. So what is constitutional iridology? Well, iridology in general is looking at the colored part of the eyeball. Now, there's a huge difference between constitutional and emotional and Jensenian, and there might be some other styles out there as well. Constitutional iridology is going to take into account what the constitution of the body is. It's going to give us information about how this body is put together, where we might expect to see issues, where we might see strengths, even to a certain extent, what kind of issues we might see. Modern iridologists also often have a background in sclerology, and we do teach sclerology in the dynamic iridology course as well. The reason we do that is because the iris itself is genetically determined. This is what your parents blessed you with, parents, grandparents, great-grandparents, great-great-grandparents. They are the ones who have determined what goes into your iris. That's how we know the iris is genetic, and that's how we also know that it's giving us information about your genes. We're going to go deeper into that in just a moment. The sclera is not genetic. Maybe a little bit, but not as much as the iris. And so what we see in the sclera gives us information about what is going on in the body right now. It may not tell us exactly what it is, but it tells us where it is. It tells us there's congestion or inflammation, or in some cases, some other things as well. So the sclera is very dynamic, very current. The iris is genetic. It's what's inherited. We often talk about the iris as showing us our inherent potentials. Okay, are we good so far? Is that making sense, that we've got the two different levels of information? The genetic information, I like to call it the epigenetic information that has been passed down through the generations, showing up in the irides, and the what you've done with it showing up in the sclera. If that makes sense, give me a makes sense in the comments box. And being a small group, I'm really counting on you to play with me here. Thank you so much. Okay, so why does this work? The brain knows what your body is genetically, right? The eyeballs are direct connections to the brain. They are your largest neural receptors. The iris itself has 28,000 nerve endings. We don't know what most of them do. We haven't got that figured out yet. We know that the eyeball develops embryologically at the same time the nervous system does. Right? The eyes are fully developed by 7 months gestation. And, by 9 months when a baby is born, they can see, right? If there's a challenge in the body that the brain knows about, there is usually a marker or some kind of an indicator in the iris. Now, that doesn't mean that we can look at the iris and go, you have this problem. That would be diagnosing. But with many things, we can say your body is predisposed to having an issue in this area. Again, when we see these things in the iris, it is not a guarantee that the person will have a problem there. If we see an indicator in, say, the heart region, one of the 4 heart regions in the iris, we don't tell a person, well, you're going to die of a heart attack within the next week, right? That's just, we just don't do that. That doesn't have, we can't tell that. It's not accurate. But we can say that inherently there has been something passed down. Now, that person might already know that. Maybe a parent and a grandparent and a great-grandparent all had heart disease and all passed away with heart problems. So maybe this person is making really good health choices, is being very physically active. They're choosing the right kinds of foods. They're getting enough sleep. They're making sure they are protecting their really supportive relationships. They're doing everything physically, emotionally, and spiritually they can to support their heart. They may be able to take whatever that thing is that has been passed down to them as an epigene, and they might be able to keep it in the inactive state because of what they're doing. Does that make sense? If it does, give me an oh yeah in the comments box. So when we see markings in the iris, it shows us again that epigenetic potential. It doesn't give us a guarantee. Okay, but if we understand our anatomy and physiology, we can begin connecting dots, and we can see where our clients' current symptoms are coming from. And that helps us to understand what to do about them. So what can iridology teach us? Well, again, the irides, which is what we're focusing on today, teach us about inherent predispositions, what has been passed down from the past 3 to 4 generations. So this person's eyes tell us that she is prone or predisposed to spending a lot of time in the sympathetic nervous system. So she is often on that edge of fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, right? Just at that edge, ready to just respond at a moment's notice, right? Usually respond much bigger than what needs to be, the response needs to be. So when we know that someone, when we see that in an eye and we talk with them and we understand that, yeah, they internalize their stress and they're a little edgy all the time, we know that then we're going to need to do some support for the nervous system, for the adrenals, food choices, herbs, vitamins, maybe teach them meditation, get them doing yoga, get them going out into nature, literally tree hugging, things like that. This person is also, we see from her eyes, predisposed to having her liver run the show. Now, the liver does over 500 different jobs. Most people know that it filters the blood, but that is such the wrong answer. That is so oversimplified, because even that is a two-stage process of phase 1 detox, phase 2 detox, and then phase 3 is getting it out of the body, right? So we know that her liver wants to run the show. That could show up as immune symptoms because the liver has immune functions. It might show up as blood symptoms because the liver stores iron. It makes the proteins for all parts of our body, including the heme protein for our red blood cells. It could show up as energy symptoms because liver and pancreas work together with carbohydrates to keep our energy stable and balanced. It could show up as allergies. It could show up as hormonal issues. You know that the liver takes carbs, turns them into cholesterol, and cholesterol is the building block for all of our hormones. And so we've got all of these different things that it could be. And looking at her eyes, I can't tell you which one or ones of those things she's going to have problems with. But when I talk with her and she starts telling me the symptoms she's got, I can go, yeah, this, those are liver things. Those are rooted in liver function, right? So we really have to understand anatomy and physiology in order to connect what we see in the iris with what the client's symptoms are. So the eyes teach us what questions to ask. We see the eyes, we see the markings, we have the client's symptoms. When we put the symptoms with the markings, now we have a list of questions that we want to ask that will help us to get to the root of the problem. This client, she came into me with a recurring bladder infection and with allergies. So her eyes again suggested a predisposition towards allergies and infections because her liver may not want to do all of its jobs properly, and it might need some support at that constitutional level, not at a surface level. Like I would not give her an antibiotic type herb like golden seal and echinacea, right? I wouldn't give her just an antihistamine type herb like nettles. Well, nettles maybe because it does work on the liver, but I'm going to want to work on the liver for sure here, right? And yes, I could still give her an antibiotic type thing, golden seal with echinacea or some corn silk or some cranberry and buchu, something like that. I could give her an allergy formula as well. Those are band-aids. Those are going to make her feel more comfortable while we do the deeper work with the liver. How's that sounding? Is that sounding like the kind of work you want to do? Putting things together, not just working on symptoms. If it is, let me know in the chat box. So here again, we might use some golden seal. Golden seal actually does have some liver functions to it as well, but we probably want to make sure we're doing a well-rounded program and not just a golden seal product. I mean, we've got to then watch our blood sugar levels with that one and so on. Interestingly, this client had been away for a few years, and that happens. I get my clients feeling good and they disappear. I know if they're not coming back to see me, they're feeling good. And then something goes sideways, and they often can't get into their doctor quickly enough because it's really hard to get into doctors up here. So they'll come back to me to see what we can do. So she'd been away for a few years, and she reached out to me just recently in a panic because she was breaking out in hives all over her body. That's an allergic response, right? Unfortunately, she waited too long to call me, and she ended up in the urgent care clinic getting a prescription for prednisone. If she'd reached out to me with the very first sign of hives, she's had them before, so she knew what was going on. We might have been able to short circuit the problem with the right kinds of herbs and supplements. All right, there's a lot of different things we can do with hives. And it's not just dealing with the hive itself, it's getting to the root. Why are the hives there, right? Now, did you notice, I don't know if you've been watching anybody else on social media do iris analysis, they will often say that eyes like this are toxic, that these people need to do a cleanse. Have you heard that anywhere before? Have you seen anyone on social media going, oh, your eyes are so toxic, you better get on a liver cleanse right now, or you need a kidney flush, or have you heard that? If you have, give me I heard or something like that. Let me know in the chat box that you've seen those things out there. I will not say that because the eyes do not tell us that she's toxic. Her symptoms will tell us she's toxic, but not her eyes. I did not say this person needs to cleanse. Her symptoms will tell me that, but not her eyes. I will not say that her eyes look like she has a congested liver because that's not what the eyes tell us. I will never say these eyes look unhealthy. No one needs to hear that. And I say that because the work we do is not going to change the irides one little bit. The irides are genetic, and the things that we do are not going to change their genes. We might turn epigenes on and off, but we don't change the genes. The genes are still there. So with this client, we just can't possibly know if she's toxic, if she needs to cleanse, if her liver's congested, until we speak with her and put her symptoms with what we see in the eyes and ask the right kinds of questions. So we need to have a conversation with the client to understand what the symptoms are, what they're already doing for their health, and then we put that together with our iris analysis. Iridology, again, can teach us lots of other things. So looking at these beautiful eyes, when we see this ring sitting so close to the pupil and it hasn't moved there, that's where it's been since this person was conceived, we consider that to be a constricted collarette. This suggests that she's predisposed to constipation and poor energy production. However, we don't tell her that. We want to find out how she's feeling, what her symptoms are, what her concerns are. Maybe her energy is great. Maybe she figured out a long time ago that she is prone to constipation, but if she eats these foods, drinks lots of water, gets physical activity every day, she can keep her bowel moving beautifully. Right? She's learned her own rules for health based on what her body responds to. And so I don't need to say anything to her about, oh, you're predisposed to constipation. You know, I could say you've got a tight collarette that could increase your risk of constipation. Or I might more likely say, when we see this ring this close to the pupil, it suggests that there might be a risk of constipation. Has that been a part of your history? Right. And then she can tell me her story about that. Again, she might already be doing lots that's constructive. And actually that was the truth with this client. She was already very diet aware. She was very body aware. She ate small meals. She ate lots of vegetables, very little grain, made good protein choices, and she was making good food choices overall. She, even before she came to see me, she was already using digestive aids as they were appropriate, different types of enzymes. And she had no gut symptoms at all. That's not what she actually came to see me for, which was very exciting that she had figured that out for herself. She knew herself well enough. And I could say, you know, those constipation problems that you said you used to have, yeah, congratulations for knowing what to do, because you've inherited this and it does want you to be constipated, but you've outsmarted it. So keep up the good work. I love being able to tell my clients when they are totally on track. So good, so good. Her eyes suggested another predisposition, and this was actually what she came in to see me for. She was having seasonal allergies. When the weather turns nice, those of you who know where I live north of the 49th parallel in the cold north, true and, well, maybe not so free, who knows? That was political, sorry. We're into autumn now. It's being a very warm autumn, but you know, in the next couple of weeks, it's going to get cold enough that we're not going to leave our windows open at night, right? And she was to the point with her allergies, her seasonal allergies, where she could not have her windows open ever, especially not in the spring and summer, because it would just go straight to her sinuses. So, when I was working with her, Her eyes suggest that she actually is a little bit prone to leaky gut. Now, there's a lot out there about leaky gut and about gut biome, and how if the gut and the biome are not good, nothing else is going to work, right? You've heard about biome, right? If you have, give me the word biome in the chat box if you've heard a little bit about it. I'm not asking, are you an expert, but you've heard the word, you know a little bit about it. Yes. Thank you, April. Excellent. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Maria. Brilliant. Fantastic. And so we knew that we needed to, in order to heal, no, let me choose a different word. In order for her to not have sinus allergies, we weren't going to work on the sinuses, we were going to work on the gut. So we worked on her gut. We worked really hard on her gut, and we got everything there working tickety-boo. That gut lining is what we were working on, because if the gut lining is not working, the whole biome's going to be out of balance, and it takes rebuilding the biome properly and repairing the lining at the same time in order to get things to work right in the intestinal tract. So we were able to do that with her, and we got her to where she could sleep with her window open year round. Well, not when it's -40 out, but whenever the weather was good. And so things like we used collagen with her, because collagen gives us the amino acids to rebuild, right? We did some stomach support with her and some betaine hydrochloric acid as well, because there were indications that she maybe wasn't digesting her proteins well enough. Makes no sense to give her something that's going to give her amino acids if we're not helping her to break it down and digest it, right? And so those are things that we could see from her eyes, that we needed to work on stomach lining, because genetically the stomach lining wanted to be weak. It wanted to be not robust, not efficient. Now, in doing all the work we did, we didn't change her genes, so it didn't change her eyes, but that's okay because it changed her symptoms, right? We got that gut rebuilt. That meant she wasn't leaking things into the bloodstream and into the lymph that didn't belong there, because those things that didn't belong is what the body was trying to get rid of through the sinuses, right? So by healing the gut, I got to watch my words here, by improving the integrity of the gut. There we go. That's a much better way of saying it. We were able then to see her remediate her allergies and not have allergies anymore. Very cool. So why should health professionals use constitutional iridology? Oh, because constitutional iridology is the best. Now, I just need to ask a quick question. Are any of you licensed in a way that you could requisition lab tests? If you are, just give me labs in the chat box. Like, you might be a nurse practitioner, maybe you practice in a state where nurses are allowed to requisition certain tests. Maybe you're a naturopath in certain states where you can do that. Doesn't look like anybody is. Okay. Well, then this is a beautiful thing, that constitutional iridology helps us to assess our clients holistically. It helps us connect the pieces and understand the process of what the body is genetically inclined to do. We look at the constitution first, so the whole eye, not nitpicking little bits and pieces, but we look at the whole eye. And we only start dissecting and looking for individual tiny markers as a last resort, and only if it's needed. Constitutional iridology helps us connect helps us to see how to balance using cleansing and nourishing, right? I think North Americans are cleanse happy. Have you noticed that everybody needs a cleanse? There are a lot of people out there who teach everybody needs a cleanse. I saw somebody who's got quite a high profile, so I won't mention any names, assessing a very poor photo of a young child. Apparently this person was doing an iris assessment with this very poor photo that had been sent in by email, so it was a very poor photo. And he had printed it up on regular computer paper, so it was really bad. And he was saying that this 2.5-year-old child needed a cleanse. And I'm thinking, yeah, the kind of cleanse you're talking about is dangerous for a child that young, right? I think we're just cleanse happy. I see too many clients come through my office, and when they come through, they ask, well, aren't you going to put me on a cleanse? It's like, no. Well, why not? Well, I don't know how your body's going to respond yet. I don't know how well you follow instructions. And I really don't think you're backed into a corner where a high-powered cleanse is the right answer. I think what we need to do is be improving daily habits, because improving daily habits is like, you clean the living room today, you clean the kitchen tomorrow, you clean the bathroom the next day, you clean your bedroom the next day, and you work through the entire house every week. That's what your daily food and lifestyle habits are. They keep your body functioning on a regular basis, and they allow your body to auto cleanse without you needing to do anything high test. And occasionally we'll throw in a few cleansing herbs just to clean a little, to get the body cleansing routinely on a slightly deeper level, but we don't even do that very often. When we are doing iridology as health professionals, it helps us to understand how to alter programs as warranted, right? So we see a client for the first session, we get their history, we get that understanding of their diet, their lifestyle, their symptoms, their family's health. We do the eye photos, we figure out, okay, you're here, these are the problems you've got, this is what I see in your eyes, these are the questions I want to ask, this is where we want to go. I want to see you again in a month, and I want an update even in between, because I need to tweak things as we go. We've done 2 minor dietary changes. We've given you 3 little supplements. Let's see what's happening in a month to see what else we can do. Oh, okay, in a month we can do this other dietary change now. We're ready for it. We're ready to change the supplements in this way. Okay, and you are ready to add this to your lifestyle. So we can build the program and thereby avoid overwhelming our clients. Constitutional iridology helps us to avoid slicing and dicing or subdividing the body into tiny parts. So many people that do old style iridology, and I've had a lot of these people who are certified iridologists through other organizations come through my course, and they were taught to make a list of absolutely every single marking they see, list every problem that those markings could possibly mean, and every remedy that those problems would require. And that creates a massive program. And it takes hours to do that. And most of the information is not necessary. By starting with looking at the whole and lasering in on the things that are needful, we are able to bring balance to the body, get really good progress without overwhelming our clients and without spending hours writing reports. So it helps us to avoid the slice and dicing. This is the iridology map we use. This is one that is based on the work of my instructor, Bill Caradonna. It had not been updated in a few years. This is 35 or 40. The foundation was about 35 years old. And about 20-ish years ago, I approached Bill and said, there's been research, and I know you're busy, you don't have time to update it. Do you mind if I base a chart, an iris map on your work? And he was delighted that I wanted to use his work as the foundation. So we've added the refinements of the last few years to the last 2 decades to the iris map. Now, how many of you have seen the Jensenian iris map? I don't have mine handy. Have you seen the Bernard or the Ellentart Jensen maps? Yeah, okay. So Chris, what you will remember is that every little space has something in it, right? Every little space. Do you remember that? That there are no empty spaces on that map whatsoever. Yep, she says. Those spaces are so tiny that if you think of this as a clock, and each of these big lines is an hour marking, and we just have 5 marks in between. On the Jensen map, they have 10. And there are some areas that are literally 1 marking wide. Now, can you imagine you've got this eyeball you're looking at, and the iris itself is about a ½ inch across. And if you're even slightly off level, you're now giving that marking an assignment to a body part that it doesn't belong to. Right? So with constitutional iridology, we're not concerned about the arm or the shoulder or the hand or the knee or the pinky finger or the earlobe. We are concerned about organs that are metabolically active, organs that affect the metabolism. Now, admittedly, if someone has a bone cancer in their leg, that's going to affect their metabolism. And in that case, I would go to a Jensen chart for that if I needed to. But for regular, everyday clinical work, this is a much simpler map to use. So here's one of my clients, and I want to walk you through how I did her iris assessment. Woman in her mid-50s came to me with hot flashes. Now, I was embarrassed because when she came in, she said, "Do you remember me?" And I said, "I am so sorry, I do not." And she said, "Well, that's okay. I came to see you about 20 years ago and I had a sinus problem and you fixed it in one session and I never needed to come back." She said, "But now I need you for something else." So I was glad that she was forgiving of the fact that I hadn't remembered her after just one session so many years ago. So as I look at her eyes, she's got these hot flashes that are debilitating, and to the point where they're interrupting her sleep, they're affecting her mental health. It is not good. She's a social worker by training, and she does work as a clinical social worker. She's got her diet pretty much figured out, and it's actually pretty good. She doesn't have a lot of junk food. In fact, she has no junk food. Her food is from scratch. There's lots of vegetables. There's good proteins, very clean proteins, mostly organic. She doesn't drink alcohol. She has 1 cup of Turkish coffee per day. She's Lebanese, and so she's got the Turkish coffee there. And when I look at her eyes, I see that her nervous system wants to be functioning in the sympathetic, right? I see that she's got some markings sitting in the adrenal glands. So that tells me that the adrenals genetically, inherently want to be out of balance. They are not robust, right? And so the questions that I needed to ask her was, how does she handle stress? Does she feel it in her body? Does she get angry? Does she get sad? Does she get weepy? Does she crave chocolate? How does she handle stress? Looking at her eyes overall, I can tell as well, the fact that they're brown and the fact that we've got some other brown pigments in here tells me that her liver wants to run the show. So I needed to ask questions like, does she have any problems digesting fats? Does she have any anger issues? Right? We know from traditional Chinese medicine that the liver is where we hold our unresolved anger. Does she hold a grudge? And being a social worker, she's learned how to work through that. So she said, "No, I don't hold a grudge. I've learned how to just let things go." So just even looking at those things, really, I didn't need much more than that, right? I asked her if she would be willing to give up coffee, and that was a hard no. So I said, "Would you do an experiment where you just give up coffee for 10 days so you can see if it has an impact?" And she said, "I'll do it for 10 days. So she did it for 10 days. And when she came in for her appointment a month later, I asked her, "How did it go?" And she said, "It was fine." And I said, "What did you notice when you were off the coffee? Was there anything?" Often there is, right? And she said, "Yep, the hot flashes were almost gone. They were barely even warm waves. I slept so much better." I said, "Okay, so what are your plans for using this information?" And she said, "Listen, coffee is the only thing I do that is not good for me. And darn it, I enjoy it. I'm going to keep drinking my coffee." Now, that was a challenge because it's not up to me to bully my clients. I had already educated her. She had already done hormone replacement therapy, and it couldn't even counteract the effects of the coffee. But she was choosing to stay with her coffee. We know that caffeine stresses the adrenals. Her adrenals already have never been genetically happy with her. Coffee is a diuretic, so it sucks B vitamins out of us. And I there's no way I can give her enough B vitamins to counteract the impact of the coffee. I don't have any supplements that are that strong. So I simply had to just suggest there's not much I can do. We already know that the medications from the doctor didn't work. We know that giving up the coffee will work. But if you don't want to give it up, there's nothing more that I can do. I have nothing that will counteract the coffee. So you've got the information now. And if there's ever anything else I can do for you, please reach out to me. But I'm not going to book a follow-up with you, and I'm not going to send you home with supplements that I don't think are going to work here. And so she said, well, thank you for being honest with me, because I appreciate that. And yeah, if I have any other issues, I will absolutely come back, because I know you will give it to me straight. So that was good. There's a lot of other markers in her eyes that suggest liver insufficiencies and inefficiencies, like not managing her carbs well, her blood lipids. There's some suggestions of circulatory congestion. There's some suggestions of digestive challenges. There's spinal shape tells us if she's got a long-standing spinal subluxation, and her shapes, both of her pupils. Did I say spinal shape? Pupil shape. Let's make this make sense for you. Pupil shape tells us that there have been long-standing spinal subluxations, and so her pupils aren't round, so we know we've got some long-standing subluxations. So, you know, I'm not going to go into everything with the client in one appointment, because not everything is relevant to her situation right this instant. I want to focus on the things that will start getting her results very quickly, and we did. And when we've got those habits, those healthy habits locked in, then I can dive deeper. I can go in different directions and say, you know, if she had kept working with me to get rid of the hot flashes and stay off the coffee, then I could have said, we see this marker. What are you doing for spinal care? What do you do to keep your spine well aligned? This is suggesting that there might be some spinal misalignments, and I would suggest this practitioner might be a good one for you to work with, right? I really strive to not overwhelm my clients, but I do strive to give them enough information that they know they've got homework and for them to get results. Is this making sense? Is this working for you? Just also want to ask, how many of you have actually seen an iridologist in the past? If you've seen an iridologist, had an iris assessment done, let me know in here. April says, yes, she has. Fantastic. Anybody else actually seen an iridologist, had an assessment done? Oh, sorry. April says, I have not. Maria says, yes. Okay, but it makes sense. Fantastic. Okay, so this is another client. He's been with me for quite a while. He is currently 64 years old. 5'11", and was weighing about 200 pounds. Photos at the top were taken in 2014. Now notice they are different cameras. That accounts for the difference in lighting, the difference in color. That's all technical stuff. That's not, oh my goodness, he did a huge cleanse. That's all just technical stuff. So we're not looking at this as necessarily before and afters. I just wanted to show you when someone goes online and they show you an image like this, and then they show you one like this, and they say, oh, this person fasted and cleansed and took these supplements, and look at the change. Look at the tech. The light is definitely different. That means different camera, different lighting setup. Immediately invalidates the claim that the cleanse is what has changed the iris. Does that make sense? We need to be really careful with that, because a lot of people don't understand that. April says, yes, that makes sense. Fantastic. Okay, so when I worked with this fellow in 2014, when we took these top photos, we did some good work together. And then he got lazy and he disappeared. And, you know, that just happens sometimes. He was getting results and then he quit doing his homework, and then he stopped getting results and he didn't come back until April 2022. He went in for a physical with his doctor, and the doctor gave him some news he didn't want to hear. The doctor said, you are pre-diabetic. Your sugars are averaging between 7 and 7.5. That was actually his hemoglobin A1C. He had been given metformin, but that gave him diarrhea. So they switched him to Glumetza. and he had elevated blood pressure. So they put him on hydrochlorothiazide, which is a diuretic, which messed up his potassium levels. And because of being on the blood pressure medication, he was unable to perform sexually. So now he was also on Viagra. He was also on tandolapril for blood pressure and the myelin torvastatin for his cholesterol. Right? I mean, he was on that downward spiral. Everything was starting to fall apart, and he did not like that one little bit. He decided he could do something about this. So add to that, they ended up adding not just Lumenza, but Jardians for his blood sugars. And his glomerular filtration rate was a very low normal, which meant that he was kissing early stages of kidney disease. Right. Now that hemoglobin A1C should be below 5.7, and he was definitely over 7. So we know that he was insulin resistant. That's what that number means. It doesn't, and anybody will tell you that. Any lab book you look at will tell you that. So when we do the assessment here, this fellow, based on his eyes, tends to have an elevated systemic acid, which is aggravated by the low glomerular filtration rate. Because remember, the GFR is the kidneys pulling uric acid out of the body. If the kidneys aren't pulling it out fast enough, it's building up in the body, and that's elevating the systemic acid, which is going to be inflammatory. Right? That's going to lead to inflammation. When we have inflammation, it adds to insulin resistance. It inflames the cell walls so that the insulin cannot get the sugars into the cells to use it for energy. And that increases the vasoconstriction, and it messes with the aldosterone, and it reduces the potassium in an effort to balance the fluid. I mean, this is just one dream catcher mess. It's one thread that goes around and around and around and around, right? So all of this potentially comes from diet and an under acid stomach, and his stomach region in his eyes suggests he doesn't digest protein well inherently, because he doesn't secrete enough acid at the stomach level, because the stomach lining is likely not very robust. So this is what we've done with him. So it's been about 2.5 years since we started working together, and he's been very faithful. Initially, it was an appointment every month. Now we're down to about 1 every 6 months. When he goes and gets his labs redone, he comes in for an appointment so we can look at it and tweak his program. We got him to eat more vegetables. He wasn't eating very many. We got him to start including fermented vegetables in his diet, because that just helps to build the gut biome. There's a store not close or not far from his home where they actually make fermented vegetables from scratch. His breakfast had been, like a protein bar, and really it was more like a granola bar. Who are we kidding that it was a protein bar? And so we got him to get rid of that, and we got him to have breakfast, woohoo, and put some real protein in there. We got him to eliminate coffee. He was so determined to get his health on track that he would have tap danced naked on the corner of 8th and 8th if I told him it would help, right? And so we took away the coffee, no problem, done. We continued to increase his leafy green vegetables. We got him to exercise. He works as a security officer, and 1 week, he alternates weeks. There'll be 1 week where he's in the computer room watching all the security cameras. The next week he's out on the grounds and in the building walking the perimeter. So I suggested, could you get stretchy bands for the weeks that you're in the computer room? And while you're watching those computer screens, could you do some resistance training in there? Yes, he could. We got him to work on that, because as we build muscle, we improve the body's ability to accept the insulin, right? So 3 months after we started, remember he started at 7.2 was his hard and fast number for his hemoglobin A1C. 3 months, we had him down to 5.9. 3 months. And when his doctor saw that, his doctor went, whoa, well, we need to reduce the Glumetza or the Jardiance. We'll take this one away first. So they took away one, and they're tinkering with the other one. I also noticed that while he was with me, he was a lot of throat clearing, which to me is an indication of silent reflux, right? If we've got stomach contents coming up the esophagus, it irritates the esophagus, and the esophagus starts overproducing mucus to try to protect itself, and we get that constant throat clearing. So I knew then that we needed to support digestion, because you know that that lower esophageal sphincter will only close tightly to keep the contents down if the stomach acid is high enough. So when we've got that reflux, I know that we don't have enough stomach acid. So we put him on a hydrochloric acid and a general digestive enzyme, one that especially had liver herbs in it. We also added some berberine, because berberine is really great for helping the cells to be more insulin receptive. And we used some L-arginine to help with some vasodilation. So we were working on his cholesterol, his blood pressure, his blood sugars, everything. I suggested getting checked by an osteopath or a chiropractor, because I suspected he had a locked diaphragm, and he did get checked, and I was right. And they were able to, the chiropractor was able to adjust that for him so the diaphragm could move freely, which is also going to help with digestion and reduce reflux, right? So we've got all of these different things working together. After 6 months, the doctor took him off the hydrochlorothiazide and the Glumetza. I believe at this stage he is down to one medication left, and I believe it's the statin, and that dosage has been reduced, and we're looking forward to that disappearing soon. I'm very excited. He has earned the results he's getting. Like, he really has. In fact, he's inspired his wife, who has been my client for longer than he has, to kind of get with it and get back on a program. So how do we use iridology? We use it to guide our questions. We use it to create rapport and to inform our recommendations. A lot of practitioners use very lengthy questionnaires, which I think are a waste of time. I hate filling out questionnaires when I go to see a practitioner. Talk to me, ask me the questions, because I'm never going to give you everything on a piece of paper. I'm just not. And so by understanding their symptoms and by understanding how to assess the eye, we are asking questions that are relevant to that client specifically. That means the client feels heard, right? Because we're not asking them all these random questions. We're really laser focusing. Another client, 44-year-old female, her diagnosis was PCOS. She already had 2 kids, ages 8 and 10. She didn't want any more. She just wanted to lose some weight. She was 5 feet 10 inches tall. She weighed 275 pounds. She was having the PCOS hair growth places where a woman doesn't want it. She was suffering with depression, and she was on an antidepressant. The depression was because of her weight. She really was not happy. Her menstrual cycles were not regular. They were every 4 to 6 weeks. She was born without an ileocecal valve. So there's always some element of bowel issue with her. She has rosacea. She's worked with a nutritionist before, but that nutritionist was a one-size-fits-all kind of girl. Everybody who came in left with the same program. There was no individual variance. So focusing only on the markers that give us information about what this client wants help with is going to help us trace the problem back to its roots. So she has what we call a biliary constitution. She's got eyes that are not evenly brown. That's one of the ways we assess biliary. She lives in that sympathetic nervous system. So we know she burns through her B vitamins, vitamin C, calcium, and magnesium. She's got extra bits of brown pigment. So we know that her liver wants to run the show. And we know that PCOS has a very high correlation to MTHFR, right? And so we know right from there that we can't use a regular B vitamin. Marie is really smart here. She says they don't, when we give our clients a long report, they don't read it or remember it or understand it anyways. So that's absolutely true. So back to this client. When we look at her eyes, in the left iris, at about 25 minutes, we've got a marker sitting in the ovary zone. And in the right iris at about 34 minutes, we've got a couple of little markers. Now that doesn't mean PCOS, but it means that these are sitting in the ovaries. The ovaries want to be troublemakers. And so we've got ovaries, we've got liver, we've got that she burns through her stress nutrients. So understanding that, we were able to start creating a protocol for her that would help to balance out her moods, which would give her the energy to actually physically do some workouts, and would also give her the energy and the clarity of mind to stick with some food modifications. And so that's where we went with her. We also see this, which is what we call a fungal labyrinth. And we see that the ends of these blood vessels have little kind of purpley blue dots at them. Those also suggest that she likely is carrying a yeast infection, which would be very common with PCOS, because PCOS always includes insulin resistance, almost always. There's also a bit of a yellowish haze in here, which suggests that liver is unhappy. So when we see all of that, we know that we need methylated Bs. We need an acetylcysteine to help her liver function better. She was using big box gummy vitamins and supplements. We got her off all of those. We started working with her food. And again, her food intake was sporadic and really sloppy. She was not consistent with good habits. So we started small. She wasn't hungry at breakfast time, so we didn't even start there. But lunch was a soup or a salad or a sandwich on white bread. So we suggested, could she make homemade soups and take an individual serving? Make sure there's good protein in that. For supper, again, protein and vegetables. She used to have rice with it, not the best choice. So we had her get rid of the rice and add more low carb veg. And we had her start working on getting 2 liters of water a day. Got her walking 5 minutes a day and increased that by 2 minutes per walk each week. At 4 weeks, she was loving this. She was already down 4 pounds. Her body composition was shifting, and she was talking about how loose her clothes were getting. She stopped the antidepressant on her own. I did not tell her to do that. She stopped it, and she said she was feeling happier. Her husband said she was sleeping more peacefully. She was waking up more energized. We added collagen to her program. Another 4 weeks later, she was down another 4 pounds. She had never gone down consistently over 8 weeks before. She'd always been down to, up to, down to, up to. So the fact that she was down was great. Down to pant sizes. Her labs, her doctor said that her labs were the best he'd ever seen them. So that was good. So we kept building her program and building over the months. Every month there was another little tweak to keep pushing her in the right direction. She's doing very well. So if that's the kind of iridology you want to learn about, that you want to maybe learn how to do, the next course date is starting November 28th and registration is open. The first step in getting in there is I'm posting a link, oops, wrong place, posting a link in the chat box for you. That is the one you see on the screen here. There's information about the course there. And if you love what you see there, then there's also an invitation on there to book a one-on-one appointment to chat with me. And it's a casual chat. Think of it as a campus tour. It's a meet and greet for us to get to know each other. Dynamic iridology assessment is for health professionals, people who want to do this professionally. It's 22.5 hours-ish live webinar classes like this, but a whole lot more interaction. They're recorded for playback on demand. So if you have to miss a class once in a while, not a big deal. We have extra live group mentoring twice each month via webinar. So if you've got a case you're working on, if you've got questions, if there's things we didn't have time to address in your classes, you can bring them into office hours. We have a student and alumni MeWe group. So all of my students and my alumni are invited to participate in this group, again, to share cases, to ask questions, to answer questions. You will receive a 225-page digital textbook That is the textbook that we use. It's the one I wrote for the program, 45 pages of digital study notes. We call those the cheat sheets. My students love these. It's the entire course in a synoptic version. Like, it's just point forms, charts, and tables. They love it. I include the mentoring to prepare you for IPA certification if you decide you want to certify with the International Iridology Practitioners Association. Most teachers charge extra for that. I include it. Kimberly Zadalis said, if you're wondering which iridology course to take, you can stop looking. You found it. Judith Cobb is an excellent instructor with many years of experience. She's a caring and compassionate person who is dedicated to the field of iridology and her students. I personally practice both Eastern and Western physiology medicine and was very impressed with the layout of her program. She makes it easy for her students to balance work, life, and study. So again, just an invitation that if you're serious about learning iridology and you've got that A&P course already under your belt, use that link that I posted into the chat box and go and look at that, gather more information about the course, and then book a time, schedule a time just to meet me, to talk about the course, and let's see if it is a good fit for you. Let's see if the November 28th start date is the right idea. And from there we have it. So just before we say goodbye, any questions, any comments, anything else I can support you with this evening? Give you a minute to lightning finger your answers in on your keyboard. And I don't know that I don't think anything is coming in. The internet's a little slower tonight. Sometimes it's incredibly fast. Sometimes it's a little bit sluggish. All right, so it doesn't look like there's any more questions. So, oh, great class. Thanks so much, says Chris. You're very welcome, Chris. I'm glad you were here. I look forward to speaking with you soon, hopefully one-on-one, and we will see you around. Take care and have a good one. Bye for now.